Welcome to my channel, guys. My name is Tolu. I'm a Christian dating coach, and I specialize in showing single Christian women how to go from single to married in a year. Now, if you know you're a single Christian woman that wants to get married in a year, you want to start meeting, dating, and getting into the right relationship that's going to lead you to your husband, then you should definitely apply to work with me one-on-one inside my 6-month program, Dating to Marry. This is a program that is tailored for Christian single women with busy lives that want to get married in a year. So if that is you and you want to learn the strategies that have helped my clients to meet their husbands and get engaged and married within a 1-year timeline, then click the link in my bio and first tap to apply. And once I see your application and you're the right fit, we'll have a conversation and we'll start our work to make 2026 the year that you meet, date, and get married to your husband. So here's what I wanted to talk about. When you're, meeting men, getting into a relationship, but they don't pursue consistently. So if this is a pattern you've noticed, whether you meet men, you end up not going on dates, or you do end up going on dates and then their interest drops, or you do end up going on dates, getting into a relationship, and then they want to break up with you, the problem there is vetting. And by vetting, I mean learning to filter fast when it comes to identifying patterns in male behavior. So vetting is a skill that I show my clients how to use when they are dating, because when you learn how to vet correctly, you also simultaneously raise your value in terms of how men perceive you and how men pursue you. Let me give you an example. If someone if someone wanted to purchase, say you wanted to purchase a bag, and there were 2 stalls, and one stall, the customer service or the lady that attends that store told you a bag was $10. Then you went to another store and they told you a bag was $100, $500. In your head, which has more value? Like immediately. You immediately think the bag worth $500 has more value. And it has nothing to do with the actual bag, but firstly, the way the price has been structured immediately raised the value in which and the way in which you viewed the bag in your eyes. It's the same with dating, and it's the same with how men perceive you in the dating process. If you are giving off $10 vibes, do not expect 500, 5,000, or whatever monetary amount you consider to be high-end effort. Don't expect it. It's not going to happen. It's going to drop. It's going to be inconsistent. It's not going to be present. They lose interest. They will become, unpredictable in terms of behavior. Today is good behavior, tomorrow is bad. If this is a consistent experience, you're giving $10 value in the dating process. And the issue there is you need to review the way you are positioning yourself, and vetting is a very quick way to do that. So sticking with my analogy of the 2 bag shops or bag stores, all they did was give a different price point. But they, on their end, say you are the store owner or you're the lady working at the store, you are positioning your product for a very particular kind of customer. So in your head, you know that this is the kind of customer I want, this kind of purchasing power I want them to have, this is the kind of value I want them to see in my product, and that determined the price that you placed on the bag, in that case being $500. So on your end, you are vetting for the kind of customer you want to be able to have access to your product. It's the same with dating. In terms of how you are meeting men, qualifying men, you need to set a particular standard of the quality of men you are available to entertain. And you need to do that before you start meeting the men, to be able to know whether or not this is a man that passes that level of scrutiny. That is your standard parameters that you have set that you want to entertain. Now, when you don't do that, what ends up happening is you'll get all sorts of men coming in your direction and taking you on, all sorts of journeys that you have no interest in going to, and not leading you down the aisle and not leading you to the relationship you want. So vetting is actually critical in changing the way you position yourself in the dating scene and the kind and quality of men you attract. I always tell my clients, and the work I do with my clients is setting a very basic standard to start dating with, to test how much they are able to vet. So for example, you may come to me and say, "Oh, Tolu, I've never dated a man over 6 foot before because I've been told that, not my standards are too high." Well, in my coaching container, if you want 6 foot, you're only dating 6 foot. And all the clients that I've worked with over the years and helped to get married and get on dates and go in relationships, they only date men that meet the requirements that they desire that are non-negotiables. And if height is a non-negotiable for you, there's no reason why you should be debating it, because that is the very reason why you're attracting the wrong men and you're entertaining men that you don't find attractive. It's not because the men you want aren't there, it's because you're not available for them. So that's one example. Maybe you do meet a guy that's 6 foot, and you start going on dates with him, but because you're so excited and you've never been approached by a guy that actually matches the qualities that you're looking for on a basic level, you start to do too much, as we say, back home. And by doing too much, I mean, you start to overshare. Some of you share too much too soon. You start to try and make yourself available for him as many times and as many ways as he wants. Again, you're lowering your standard. So imagine again with the $500 bag or $5,000 bag, whichever price value you want to place on it, the high-end bag anyway. A customer comes to your store and they say, oh, I only have $50. But because you're so desperate to sell, you're like, okay, I can give it to you for $400. Immediately, your value is dropping. And think about it from the perspective of the customer as well. Your value in that product, your perceived value of that product is also going to drop because they've changed. You've gone to that store thinking this is the price point. You were just trying your luck. And guess what? They were flexible with it. Your perceived value of that product will drop. But if, you were told, actually, this is a non-negotiable price, this is our standard policy, and so on and so forth, you will find a way, if you really want that bag, to get it. It's the same way with dating. When you start meeting men that you do find attractive, it doesn't mean you drop your value. So your vetting process needs to continue even as you are communicating with men. And how it looks like on a basic scale is you maintain the parameters that keep you comfortable. If you don't want to go to... if you suggest a particular location for a date you don't want to go to, you don't say, sure, let's go, just because you're trying to please him. If you're not available at a particular time that he calls because you're in a meeting, you don't step out of the meeting to pick the call because, you can always call back or you can always, drop a message or a text. You have to maintain that value standard through the dating process, even as you start connecting with men that you do find attractive, to make sure that your vetting is consistent. So, if you're not doing any of these things, it's part of the reasons why men stop pursuing. It's part of the reasons why they lose interest. But if you also, on the flip side, are maintaining your standards in the dating process, and of course, when we work together one-on-one, we dive into this in much deeper detail. And it's this work that puts my clients in positions to date their husbands. When you work with me, we're not trying to get you to be dating every Tom, Dick, and Harry. My interest is making sure you're only dating men that qualify on the scale of what you find attractive physically, emotionally, financially, and spiritually, so that you can actually be visible to date your husband, because he's going to meet those parameters at the very least. And, this is a conversation I was having with my client that has worked with me, and she's getting married next year. So I was having a conversation with her last week, and because when my clients meet their spouses, get engaged, I love to know the details. So I was, and I love to make them reflect, because I remember when we started our session, she wasn't in a relationship. She wasn't seeing anybody that was serious. She was seeing men, but she wasn't seeing any men that were intentional and men that actually connected with her spiritual, emotional, physical, financial values and desires in a partner. Now, of course, her husband-to-be meets all those qualities and more. And I remember, reminding her that, remember, I told you that the desires you have are actually in place to help you filter out the wrong men. And she was like, oh, yes, absolutely. I remember, because my partner, my husband-to-be, meets, in fact, everything that I've been asking God for. He meets all the qualities. And this is a consistent feedback I get from my clients, regardless of their age, location, regardless of their dating history. This is a consistent feedback I get from my clients that have crossed over to meeting their spouses and are getting married and are already married, even though everyone around them was telling them your standards are too high. In fact, I remember another client, we were reflecting and I said, remember I told you what you want is available, even though everyone in your life is literally telling you you're too picky. But look at it now. Your pickiness is what led you to your husband, because I don't believe that as a woman of faith, you should compromise. I don't even believe in being too picky. I like to call it that you're being prepped and primed. In other words, you're being prepared to be visible to the quality and caliber of man you want. And she said, absolutely. In fact, you were the only one that was telling me that my qualities in a spouse are qualities I should stand by. And now she's happily married to her spouse who matches and mirrors her qualities, like literally, to a T. The reason I share that here is because when you are vetting, it needs to be based on standards that you desire. It cannot be based on maybe I should, and this is something consistently I see with women that start, when they start working with me, and this is part of the work I do with you one-on-one, because I know if we don't fix that, you are not going to be visible to your husband, right? And it's a skill that I teach all my clients that have made them visible to their spouse. That's why they're able to get married in a year. Even if they literally just met the man yesterday, it's why they're able to get married in a year, because that man is going to match your standards and your caliber and your quality, even with timelines as well. He's going to match it. Now, the mistake I see women making is they compromise a couple of things. Whether you're compromising your spiritual values, he's not really a Christian, but it will be fine. Or you're compromising your physical values. He's not someone I find attractive, but let me make it work. Or you're compromising your emotional values. He talks terribly to me. He messes up all the time, but let's try and make it work. Or you're compromising your financial values. He doesn't have the job. He's intimidated by my career success. He's trying to figure himself out, but I can make him. That but is very dangerous. And it's the reason why you are experiencing being pursued inconsistently by men. And something I see that is kind of characteristic of dating within the church space as well, like when you meet men in the church. Now this is a broad, and by the way, what's really interesting that I've seen is my clients that obviously I'm a Christian dating coach that have stepped into marriage and have met their spouses. They don't necessarily meet them in the church building. Okay, so if you keep thinking I need to meet my husband in the church, that's a lie. These women that I've worked with have met their spouses anywhere from online apps to through family friends to work functions to social media, and these are all Christian men. So Christian men are everywhere. Just a quick heads up to that. But something that is quite interesting that I've seen in the course of my work is just because you meet him in a church space doesn't mean that is your husband. That's the first thing I will call out. Secondly, it doesn't mean that he's emotionally developed enough to be able to carry a healthy relationship with you in partnership. That's another thing I will call out. So stop doing that. Okay, so just because you meet a man in the church or your pastor introduced him to you, or I don't know, he's a guest minister, whatever the case may be, don't sort of, bypass your usual filters. Every man, and this is something I tell my clients and I teach them to do, every man has to go through your screening process. And by screening, I mean vetting accurately based on what God has told you and in partnership with the Holy Spirit. It is a skill you need to learn because it will not only make it easier for you to know your husband based on facts. Forget you had a dream or somebody confirmed to you or whatever. Based on factual patterns. In other words, how he's acting, how he's showing up, the evidence you're seeing from your experience of him. You will be able to see it faster if you stick to the parameters that are non-negotiable for you in the dating process. But then it's also important to mention vetting works with visibility. So you can't say I'm only dating this kind of man and nobody is seeing you. If you recall, I just mentioned my clients meeting men in different places because these are places they are visible. So it's important that you are visible as well so that you are creating the opportunity. Think of visibility like a door. And, you are creating the opportunity for men to be able to walk through your door. And then your screening process is the process of qualifying if they deserve to be in the room at all. In other words, to actually have access to even have a conversation with you and date you. So part of the work I teach my clients is learning to ask the right questions first. And the right questions are based on your vetting standards. They're based on standards that you are clear about what God has said to you. And which is why in my program, part of the skill set you learn is knowing how to discern when the Lord is speaking to you and what he's saying. But when you do this, inconsistency in pursuit will drastically reduce. and you will be able to know much faster. Something that would have taken you maybe 3 months to figure out, you will figure it out in 3 days, right? Because vetting is going to give you speed in the dating process. And it's again part of why my clients are able to get married within a year, because we shorten the timeline. So something that would have taken you 6 months to figure out, you can figure out in the first week of communicating with a man, because you're asking very clear questions, you're looking for very clear direction. Your emotions aren't getting in the way. You're purely interacting with this person from a space of consistent standards that you have set and you are using to navigate the process of getting to know them. And this is also how your husband will recognize you, because when you are dating from that space, you're going to give off a very different energy. You're going to be a woman that he's experiencing in a genuine way. And it's going to translate into how you are able to connect with him and the speed at which he will get confirmation that you're a woman that he wants to marry. So if you are constantly experiencing men that are inconsistent, your vetting is the problem. Stop blaming the dating apps. Stop blaming the man. Your vetting, you are doing a very terrible job of vetting. That's the truth. It's either you are not doing a good job at the beginning of when you meet men. In other words, you're talking to men you shouldn't have spoken to in the first place, which is why you keep having the wrong men that you're connecting with online or through events or wherever you're going. And something I want to call out as well is the men you have met online are a reflection of the men that you're going to meet offline. So I've never seen a situation where it's only online you meet men that are of a poor, subpar quality. Usually what happens is you also meet those kinds of men offline, which means the app is not the problem. The app is just drawing to your attention much faster that you have a problem in terms of how you vet the men that you even give space for. So it's either that is your problem, or in other words, you're not clear on exactly the right questions to ask initially, and you're giving room to men that shouldn't have access to you, which is why their pursuit ends up being inconsistent, infrequent, and it ends up being a disappointment, right? Or, you're getting to know them and you're not picking up what should be very obvious to you in terms of pattern in behavior, communication, clarity, consistency. How much are you compromising at the initial stage? Those are things that you're not clear on in your vetting process that is affecting the quality of men you're actually opening yourself to enter into a relationship with or go on dates with. Or, the third level of vetting being commitment. In other words, you're pretty much, I've seen all sorts of things in this area. Maybe you're jumping into relationships too quickly, because you think, this is somebody that, he's asked me for a relationship, it must be a sign. It's not a sign. The only thing it's a sign of is that there's something very wrong. Because, this is why I encourage my clients to give it 3 months. Give it a 3-month window to actually get to know the person properly before you commit. It's very important. So if you're jumping into relationships in the first month of knowing each other, there's a very big problem. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but usually that is a major flag, because you're not really seeing you don't know anybody in just 4 weeks. Just think about it generally. You just don't know anybody in 4 weeks. Anybody can be anyone for 4 weeks. So maybe you committed too quickly, or if it's not, and in that sense, your vetting failed, right? Because one of the things vetting is supposed to help you to do is screen out the wrong men faster. So there's something you should have picked up that you didn't. Or, you entered into a relationship and you didn't pay attention to certain signs that came across through getting to know this person as a partner, as being his girlfriend. Maybe it became obvious that he had certain habits, certain behaviors you didn't pay attention to. So vetting takes place on 3 levels: at the point of contact, through the point of connecting with this person, getting to know them, and finally through the point of commitment. And when you clean these up on all these levels, if you clean it up from the beginning, in other words, the men that are getting in contact with you, you are able to vet appropriately at that point in time. You reduce the opportunity for men to take advantage of you down the line. So if you're experiencing men that are inconsistent in your pursuits, in pursuing you, I want you to ask where. if they are inconsistent at the beginning, in other words, they get your number, they never follow up, or they just never take you on dates, then your vetting failed in that area. There's something you didn't do properly there. If you're experiencing that you do go on dates, but it never leads to a relationship, that is where your vetting failed. There's something you didn't pick up in the connection. If you're getting into relationships and it's a hot mess and nothing is happening and it's not moving forward, that is also where your vetting failed. If it's all three, you're failing in all three areas. So that is what you need to adjust to be able to increase your visibility to meet your spouse. And that is the work that I do with my clients that has helped them to be visible to their husbands, regardless of where they are or what they're doing. Now, across the board, for you to test how strong your filters are, you do need to be visible. It's a non-negotiable. So with my clients, it's either they're visible online or they're visible in person, or preferably both options. But I've had clients, again, meet men in different ways. The job of visibility is to make sure that your husband has opportunity to see you. Okay, so regardless of, I've had clients that I've helped with visibility online and they have met their husbands offline. I've had clients that I've helped with visibility offline and they have met their husbands online. And the truth is, you just don't know how God wants to do it, but visibility is visibility. There is something that happens when you shift in the way that you create opportunities for men to find you. It opens multiple doors, and that's part of the process of being available to your husband, which is why when we start our work together, that is the first thing that I do with you, which is create a visibility plan and a strategy for your visibility. A plan being, okay, what are opportunities we can use with your current routine to increase the options for you to meet your spouse? And then strategy being, how do we want to deploy those opportunities to be able to make it consistent on your end to carry out on a regular routine basis, so that we naturally just increase the opportunities for men to come into your life that align with what you want. And then vetting is meant to do the job after that, right? So visibility and vetting work hand in hand. But then both, when you do it well, will naturally just raise your value. It will raise your value in terms of how men perceive you. You will notice that even before you say a word, men have already placed you in a category. They can tell, okay, this is a woman that knows what she's looking for. They can tell that you have great taste. They can tell that you're a woman. They can tell that you're a woman that is, clear about her values, and it will be before you say anything. Why? Because internally you've done the job of standing by the standards you've set for vetting, and you've created multiple avenues for visibility. So that just naturally translates into how men perceive you, and would have a positive outcome in how they pursue you. And it will naturally just increase the speed with which you connect with your spouse, and he knows that you are his spouse. It's always interesting when I talk to my clients that are now married, and I ask them, okay, so tell me from his angle, what exactly was his approach, his perspective, and so on and so forth. And, in my most recent conversation with a client that is getting married, she said he came with very clear intentions, and these were intentions that were consistent, that were clear. He was ready to commit, and he was ready to show me that he was ready to commit. And the mistake I see so many women making is entertaining men that are not even consistent enough to provide commitment. Right? So it's not enough for a guy to just say, oh, I'm looking for something serious, or I'm looking for a relationship, but he's not showing up in a consistent way. He's not aligning with the values you want from a partner consistently. But on your end of things, you need to ask yourself, because again, this is a two-way street. So my work is helping my clients align with the standards that are going to get them to be visible and pursued by their spouse. And part of that work includes knowing on your own end what you need to adjust in the way in which you connect and communicate with men, so that your value is obvious. It's visible. It is clear, even without you saying a word, because that would just naturally translate to how men perceive and ultimately how men pursue. So this is the work that, we do together. I don't know if you have any questions and you're watching this live, drop it in the chat. But this is the work that is going to help you get into a relationship that leads to the right marriage, and help you to get men that are pursuing you consistently. And, in my one-on-one program, Dating to Marry, this is the work we do for 6 months to get you married in a year, regardless of your schedule, your routine, or how much, you have on your plate. I've helped women, with busy lives, busy jobs, single mothers get married. And part of the reason that I'm able to help you with that is because we clean up the way in which you are vetting men. In other words, again, you're filtering the men you're making availability for, and you are creating opportunities for your husband to find you. And something I will say is, because I'm seeing someone drop, my engagement just got broken. I'm sorry you had that experience, sis, but a broken engagement is much better than a broken marriage. So just ask yourself, do an audit, what went wrong, what you can do differently. Take space, to pray about it and hear what the Lord is saying, and you will get clarity that will lead you to your husband. But it doesn't mean you won't get married. Again, I have a client, she was engaged, it got broken, and she got married in 5 months after her relationship of 5 years got broken. So don't worry, it happens, you'll still get married. So I hope that, gives you some comfort. But yeah, if you want to work with me one-on-one to get into a relationship that would lead to marriage in a year, click the link in my bio and first tap to apply. I'll review your application. If you're the right fit, we will hop on a call. I'll have a conversation with you, giving you a very clear plan of how I'm going to help you meet your husband. And then we work for 6 months to make sure 2026 is the year that you get married. My one-on-one sessions are 60 minutes every week. We have private calls on Zoom. You also have private access to me on WhatsApp chat on weekdays, where I coach you, I provide support and hold you accountable and review your dating process real time, help you set up your online dating filters, show you exactly what it looks like to start meeting the right men for you, and just kind of hold your hand through the journey to make sure that you are visible to your husband and you're going to get married in a year. This is the work that has led my clients to their marriages. So, once I receive your application, I'll review and we'll be able to have a call and get started to make 2026 your marital year. Then something else I want to throw in there is my one-on-one program is designed for Christian single women that are ready to get married in a year. So if you know that is you, regardless of your dating situation or your setup, doesn't matter, I'm able to help you make that happen in a year. If you have any questions about working with me, send me a DM at FanTheFlame on here on Instagram, or send me an email at tolu@tolufalode.com. I'm more than happy to answer your questions about working with me one-on-one in my Dating to Marry program. Okay, so let me see if we have any quick questions before I close this. So I'm seeing when a man says he has someone but is interested in you and asks you to give him like 2 months. Sis, 2 months to end things and come with... Okay, I'm going to say this as kindly as I can, but you are definitely facing the wrong direction. I don't know why you would... when I talked about value, you are in the $10 bucket. That's what you're doing. You're basically negotiating... You're negotiating your value with a man that clearly doesn't want a relationship with you, but just likes the opportunity to have you around. He's using you for emotional support. You need to drop that. Okay, my engagement just got broken and I tried begging. It's not giving me access. Well, you need to move on, sis. Like I just said, you need to move on. There's no reason why you should be begging a man to marry you, right? So, for both of you, you definitely need to raise your values up. So listen to this live again. Everything I say definitely applies to both your situations. And like I said, a broken engagement doesn't mean you won't get married. If anything, God just helped you out. So make sure, you take your time to heal and you ask yourself what went wrong and why you chose that man, because he clearly wasn't the right choice. And, take the time that you need to be able to move on from that. But again, I've worked with clients that have gone through broken engagements and have gotten married. And I share that to let you know you can still get married. I've also worked with women that have gotten divorced and gotten married again. So again, you can still get married. I just want you to understand that. It doesn't have to be him. It will be another man. So, take your time to heal from that and open yourself up again to meeting your spouse. And then back to the lady that was asking me about, he said you should wait for 2 months. The analogy I gave earlier, in case you were not in the room, was there are 2 stores selling bags. One is $10, one is $500, $5,000, whatever high-end value price you want to put on it. You are currently in the $10 store. You need to move to the $5,000 store. And one of the ways you do it is removing the option to entertain men that treat you like you are an option. So this should feel insulting to you. Even like in talking about it, I'm insulted on your behalf. So this should feel insulting to you, and it shouldn't even be a conversation. That man is not your husband. He has no business in your life. You need to move on, and you need to reassess the men that you are even giving access to in the first place. And this is what I mean by vetting, okay? So guys, I have to go now. The link to work with me is in my bio. Regardless of how you came across that information, that man is not available, okay? The link to work with me is in my bio. And if you have any questions about my one-on-one, feel free to send me a DM or an email at tolu@tolufalode.com. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.